The story opens with an ordinary boy sitting alone in front of his computer. He comes to a sudden realization that people are divided into two types: those who enjoy 18-plus adult games and those who do not. He once belonged to the second group, until he encountered Last Arc. He soon understands that Last Arcanum is not just an adult game. Online discussions describe it as an RPG. He begins to see that the non-erotic content is more engaging than many other games, while the erotic scenes are only an extra bonus. He repeats this to himself until he fully accepts it. Now he plays it as a grand RPG rather than an adult game, and even sets his class as admirer. Still, he cannot understand how anyone can skip the erotic cutscenes. He remembers a time when he used to think differently and recalls collecting images of the character Iris. He concludes that skipping such scenes feels like disrespect toward the creators of the game. From his perspective, enjoying every detail becomes a form of respect. While playing, he notices the next event features Scumultos and immediately decides to skip it. Scumultos, also known as Ultos Randall, is deeply disliked. His appearance alone feels unpleasant, and he spreads discomfort wherever he goes. He is the legitimate son of a duke. He is a mid-boss type villain in the Magic Academy, constantly targeting the protagonist out of jealousy. He also causes emotional suffering to the heroines through cruel behavior. Watching this makes the boy feel intense anger and frustration. Scumultos is widely hated, even by the community and creators. Fan discussions and interviews often show the same dislike for him. In fanworks, a common theme is the protagonist defeating him and healing the heroine's trauma. In live broadcasts, the chat is often flooded with hate whenever he appears. Despite this, Scumultos eventually dies after falling under the control of a mastermind. Unlike other mid-boss characters, he has no redemption or reconciliation route because of his extreme behavior. The boy reflects that he has reached near the end of his many playthroughs, though he becomes unsure of how many times he has actually played. Exhausted, he decides to sleep. Before sleeping, he wishes he could spend his life inside Last Arcanum. He also realizes he has not seen the Scumultos ending, and the true ending requires completing all achievements. With only a short time before work, he decides to rest briefly, but remembers he must clear the Scumultos route to complete everything. As he falls asleep, he hears a strange sound and feels a sense of death approaching. In that moment, he imagines being reborn into the world of Last Arcanum, living as the protagonist and enjoying life with the heroines, while also defeating Scumultos. These thoughts calm him as he drifts off. Thus begins Chapter 1, titled The Awakening of Scum. He wakes up after an unknown time and finds the surroundings strangely familiar. It resembles the world of Last Arcanum. Confused, he struggles to understand the exact place and wonders if reincarnation is real. Panic rises as he fears being exposed for his past thoughts, but he forces himself to stay calm and assess the situation. He accepts that being inside a game world is dangerous, but his deep knowledge of Last Arcanum gives him confidence. The real concern becomes his identity in this world. He immediately runs toward a mirror. Looking into it, he sees his reflection and realizes he has become Scumultos. He is completely shocked and frozen. His screams alarm the servants, who rush in panic. The head maid quickly instructs them to treat it as normal for now and sends a junior maid to check on him. In another room, he struggles to accept reality. He has been reborn into Last Arcanum as Scumultos himself. He feels fear that he will be hated, tortured, and eventually killed. He wishes he had become the protagonist Seg instead. He then notices in the mirror that his body is around 10 years old, younger than the Scumultos he remembers. This is the age when he is called a genius child, which later fuels his arrogance. This realization gives him hope. There is still time to change his fate. He recalls Scumultos' future path: extraordinary magical talent at first, followed by arrogance at 12, neglect of studies and training, and later an indulgent lifestyle involving women. This leads to his downfall. The boy decides to do the exact opposite. He resolves to avoid selfishness, ignore women, study and train moderately, and stay away from the protagonist's group. He believes this simple strategy can help him avoid death. He reassures himself that he already lived a disciplined life before, so he can manage again. He aims to become a background character, who appears only at the end, cheering for the hero. He strengthens his resolve not to let the old Scumultos take over. A maid enters trembling and begins apologizing repeatedly. At first, he couldn't recognize her. She appears unexpectedly cute, and he wonders if such a character existed in the game. She explains she thought his earlier scream was just a usual outburst. His gaze briefly falls on her, and he recognizes her as Scumultos' maid. He remembers her name as Rihanna. He asks why she is apologizing so much. She insists her name is Ryla, not Rina, and says she is sorry for speaking sharply earlier. She continues apologizing while shaking with fear. He becomes uneasy seeing her panic. He feels that this behavior will only make him look more like a villain. He tries to stop her, but she continues. She suddenly calls out to him using another name. Hearing that name, the boy is instantly reminded of her role in the original story. Rayla is a loyal maid who serves Scumultos faithfully, but in the original plot, she is mistreated due to his selfish nature and ends up injured. He dismisses her, leading to her downfall and worsening the mansion's attitude toward him. This incident becomes a major point in fan discussions, where many demand a version where she finds happiness. She is clearly an important character in his story path. He realizes a normal character would not treat a maid like this. Deciding to avoid villain-like behavior, he calmly asks about her fear. She is startled, then admits she failed to perform her daily required which caused trouble. He becomes confused, thinking it sounds childish, and realizes it may have a different meaning. He asks her about it. She explains there are 48 types of including face-to-face sitting, lap sitting, back-to-back sitting, lap pillow, and being fed from behind. He is stunned and understands the meaning. Realizing Scumultos' lifestyle is even worse than expected, he briefly considers ordering it, but immediately rejects the thought to avoid becoming a villain. He decides she does not need to do any She becomes shocked and says she was told she would be fired if she stopped. He reassures her that her injured hand makes it impossible and he will not force her. She is surprised and asks how he knows about her injury. He explains he noticed it as her master. In reality, he already knows from the game's information and that she was hiding it out of fear. He tells her to rest and informs her he will report it to the head maid. He wishes her a speedy recovery and hopes she returns soon, since she is his personal maid. After she leaves, he feels confused by his own actions. He realizes he is behaving far more rationally than the original Scumultos, yet something about it feels strange to him. Suddenly, he hurries after Rayla and apologizes for his earlier mistakes, especially for getting her name wrong. She is stunned by his unexpected sincerity. She reassures him that failure is a normal part of life, and even shares her own mistake of breaking a valuable plate. She says that facing failure is admirable and assures him that she has always believed in him. Tears form in his eyes as he thanks her sincerely. He realizes she is an important character, even if she does not appear in the main story. She leaves, and he feels he has cleared his first challenge. The headmaid appears and notices him walking alone, which surprises her. 3 months have passed. Through strict discipline and training, he transforms into a more focused and intelligent child. He prepares for magic training, especially body enhancement, the first spell in Last Arcanum. He understands that magical strength depends on noble lineage, and Scumultos already has immense magical potential. However, such power is usually misused. While reflecting, the headmaid informs him that Rayla will return tomorrow. He immediately asks about her hand and feels relief upon hearing it is healing. The headmaid becomes suspicious of his sudden seriousness. She mentions that she needs to inform the others about his recent change and asks what caused it. He realizes he must give a proper explanation. He calmly declares that he has awakened his noblesse oblige. The headmaid is surprised, but after hearing his explanation that those with power and status should help others, she accepts it and decides to inform everyone. As she leaves, she thinks this side of him suits him well. He feels relieved, knowing his explanation has worked. He internally reframes it as Scumless Oblige, thinking it helps him avoid becoming the old Scumultos. After fully understanding the situation, he realizes that Last Arcanum, commonly known as Last Arc, is not just an epic RPG but a divine RPG. Even though it is an 18+ game, he comes to accept that about half a year has passed since his reincarnation into its world, and he has gradually adapted to life there. For a moment, he organizes his thoughts clearly and recognizes his current identity as Ultos Randall, commonly known as Scumultos, a villain character. He remembers how strongly he once hated Scumultos as a player, yet he cannot understand why this one character became the center of such universal hatred. He then wonders if Last Arc could truly be a masterpiece without Scumultos. Reflecting deeply, he thinks in terms of light and shadow, how darkness makes light appear brighter, and how light naturally creates shadows. From this, he concludes that Scumultos exists as the main figure of the shadow world, even thinking he might be the true hidden main character. He calmly continues reflecting and imagines the tragic figure of a beautiful boy crushed under overwhelming magical power. He wishes such a scene existed for real, but he quickly realizes that such suffering is already present everywhere, as Ultos is also someone who oppresses others. Then he suddenly remembers his fiancée, someone he genuinely loves. This thought shifts his emotions sharply. He abandons the idea of Scumultos as any kind of shadow hero and begins cursing him as a truly disgusting person, returning to a more grounded mindset. He then recalls that in the original story, Scumultos always meets a terrible end in every route: stabbed, poisoned, strangled, beaten, or beheaded. He understands that if things continue this way, his own death will also be equally brutal and horrifying. Thinking about survival, he feels relieved that he once joined the kendo club, even though he quit quickly afterward. He acknowledges that even that small experience might be useful. However, he also realizes that a bamboo sword and a real sword are completely different. Most weapons in this world also lack curvature, making his basic kendo skills uncertain in value. He understands that after building physical strength, he must also learn this world's sword techniques. Still, he firmly accepts that despite being reborn into his favorite world, last arc, he does not want an unpleasant death. At the same time, he recognizes his advantage in his deep knowledge from repeatedly playing the original 18+ game, which he treats as a kind of cheat. Using this, he decides to secure a peaceful life. He begins body enhancement training and sets his goal to become an ordinary mob character, believing that in dangerous situations, being a mob is better than being powerless. He concludes that raising both physical and magical levels is the safest strategy. He resolves to maintain the enhanced state to its limit, believing repetition is the most efficient way to level up magic. Since there is no status screen, he uses time as a measure. His starting target is 3 minutes, and any increase confirms progress. However, he quickly realizes how difficult it is in reality. Unlike a game, the biggest issue is magical leakage. He notices that even in the game magic leaked, but here the leakage is dangerously intense. Body enhancement causes magic to spread across the entire body. It is powerful and efficient, but unstable, and the leakage itself reflects its strength. He learns that this leakage cannot be controlled. 12 minutes pass, and while trying to suppress it, the technique begins to fail. Ultos, due to his noble bloodline, possesses an enormous amount of magic, and when he uses body enhancement, it leaks uncontrollably. In this condition, even if he tries to hide, his identity would inevitably be exposed. As someone aiming to remain a mob character, he cannot afford to stand out. He decides body enhancement must only be used for leveling, feeling it is a waste of his reincarnation. Still, he pushes himself through intense training, something every player would dream of. 18 minutes pass, and a new record is achieved. At that moment, Ryla appears and congratulates him. He is shocked, realizing he never noticed her presence at all. She calmly says she has been there the whole time, but he was too focused on training. He understands he must be more careful. Looking at her, he once again notices how beautiful she is and how charming her smile feels. She happily tells him she has finished cleaning and asks if he needs anything. Seeing her, he notices that although it is not officially stated, her appearance suggests she is in her mid-teen years. He cannot understand what the developers intended. He feels that having a personal maid like this would make any inappropriate behavior toward her end badly, almost like a built-in punishment. Lost in thought, Rayla gently calls out to him and offers to talk. He is surprised that she has already noticed his distress and finds her genuinely considerate. He begins to feel that Scumless must have once bullied such a kind girl, which makes him uneasy. They then continue their conversation in detail. He explains his concern about body enhancement causing excessive magical power leakage. He adds that because his magic capacity is higher than others, he wants to keep it from being exposed. Rayla listens and becomes impressed, assuming he simply dislikes showing off. He quickly realizes she has taken it in a positive way. He further explains that the magical loss is greater than expected and feels wasteful and dangerous. Rayla becomes worried as well. He knows she cannot solve the issue, yet keeps looking at her, finding her comforting and quietly adorable. She then shares her own experience, saying she often fails when doing multiple tasks at once, like breaking dishes, but improves after focusing on one task as advised by the head maid. He considers her slightly clumsy. She then suggests that concentrating magical power into a single point might be possible. He reflects on her idea and agrees it is not bad, as it could improve efficiency if applied correctly. They decide to test it. He activates body enhancement, concentration, and immediately succeeds, but it becomes unstable and fades. He realizes the technique feels unfamiliar and was never part of the original game. He explains that he only attempted partial enhancement. Ryla is surprised that she cannot detect the magic. He confirms that the leakage has significantly reduced in that area. He becomes deeply unsettled, realizing this technique does not exist in the game and is not usable by any known character. The possibility that it may be exclusive to him feels like a major advantage. Yet he immediately questions that certainty and becomes cautious. He concludes that while difficult to master, it could allow safe use of body enhancement without revealing himself. He thanks Ryla sincerely, crediting her for the idea. She feels genuinely happy to have helped. He then asks her to keep partial enhancement a secret, explaining that exposure would cost him his advantage. She confirms it would remain only between them, and he agrees. She promises not to tell anyone. Some time passes, and he continues intense training with body enhancement. partial concentration. The results become clear as his control improves steadily. He later asks Rayla which hand he is enhancing. She observes carefully and identifies it. He realizes the enhancement is nearly impossible to detect in combat. As expected, the technique uses very little magical power, allowing long activation. He understands that while magic concealment was impossible in the game, it is possible here, even within the same world of Last Arcanum. Rayla acknowledges the technique as her idea, and confirms she has never heard of anyone else using it. He concludes that the technique is effectively a cheat skill. She is surprised. He remains uncertain but notes that Ultos is strong only in the early game, while later characters become overpowering, making him relatively weak. This technique could help him stay relevant into the mid-game. Hearing the term mid-game, Rayla misunderstands it as another game concept and shows interest in playing as well. To change the topic, he casually names the technique mob-style body enhancement. The scene shifts to Duke Randall's mansion, where the boy sits in deep thought, struggling to decide his next step. Noticing his troubled expression, Rayla brings him a cup of tea. He calmly explains that he has already improved his basic physical strength and now wants to begin learning swordsmanship. As he considers his options, he wonders whether training under the knights or the mercenaries would be the better choice. The moment he mentions the mercenaries, Rayla looks surprised, leaving him confused by her reaction. She quickly explains that, as the heir of the Duke's family, learning from the Randall Knights would be far more appropriate. Most of the knights come from noble families and are known for their loyalty, discipline, and refinement. Her words make him think seriously. Recalling information he previously learned from the headmaid, he remembers that the Randall household maintains two military forces, the Knights and the Mercenaries. The Knights are responsible for protecting Duke Randall and maintaining order throughout the territory. They function much like a military or police force, specializing in combat against other people. The Mercenaries, however, are mostly adventurers. Their primary duty is hunting monsters that threaten the territory. They possess extensive battlefield experience and are skilled in a wide variety of combat techniques. Rayla firmly insists that the Knights are the obvious choice. However, he is focused on one thing above all else: survival. From his perspective, the mercenaries offer exactly the kind of practical experience he needs. Confident in his decision, he heads for the mercenary training grounds. The moment he arrives, reality hits hard. His legs tremble with fear as he realizes this is not a game. Punches hurt, swords draw blood, and all he ever wanted was to practice at home and slowly grow stronger. Seeing how pale he looks, Rayla gently suggests returning home. Part of him wants to accept immediately, but another thought stops him. Refusing to meet a miserable end, he forces himself forward, determined to gain the strength needed to survive and avoid the countless bad endings awaiting him. The mercenaries stare at him in surprise, especially when they notice the girl accompanying him. Gathering his courage, he asks them to teach him swordsmanship. As expected from warriors who earn their living through combat, the atmosphere is rough and intimidating. They struggle to believe that the young master has come to learn swordsmanship. Instead, they regretfully inform him that they do not currently have any big-breasted, bikini-armored female adventurers available for him. The boy freezes in confusion. They remind him of his previous visit with the Duke, when he caused a huge commotion. The words bikini armor leave him completely baffled. At that moment, he regrets never paying attention to Scumless' route. The mercenaries explain that he once declared he would not train unless a big-breasted, bikini-armored female adventurer was present before storming off. Hearing this, he looks toward Rayla for confirmation. Her silence tells him everything. A wave of embarrassment washes over him as he realizes just how unbearable Scumless truly was. Even so, he finds himself reflecting on the topic. Bikini armor has always been a classic fantasy trope. It is practically a tradition and remains a fan favorite. He even remembers spending his bonus money collecting the paid DLC versions. Then reality catches up with him. The issue is not the bikini armor. The issue is that the Duke's heir publicly demanded one before agreeing to train. Before he can recover from the embarrassment, the mercenaries politely ask him to leave. They jokingly promise to contact him if a suitable bikini-armored adventurer ever appears. Trying to salvage the situation, he insists that he does not need any such adventurer and only wants swordsmanship training. Unfortunately, they refuse to budge. They remind him that a noble heir should not casually take back his own words. They even claim they would gladly teach him if such a woman actually appeared. As the conversation continues, he realizes they view him entirely as a troublesome nuisance. Just as things seem hopeless, Rayla steps forward and offers herself as the solution. The sight leaves him stunned, while her awkward insistence that she is not that well endowed leaves everyone else too embarrassed to respond. Then, with complete sincerity, she proudly tells Ultos that she followed his instructions and did her very best. She even asks him to praise her efforts. He can only stare in disbelief. All he ever wanted was to avoid Scumultos's disgraceful behavior and quietly live as an unremarkable background character. Instead, he finds himself standing in the middle of yet another ridiculous situation, feeling as though his attempt to stay unnoticed has failed completely. Seeing Ryla, the mercenaries apologize and explain that she does not meet Ultos's stated condition of being a female adventurer, so training cannot proceed. While speaking politely, they internally look down on Ultos and show clear reluctance to deal with him. Just from this, the boy realizes that even before Ultos's scumbag transformation begins, the dislike toward him is already very strong. At that moment, another man appears and offers to take responsibility for his training, while praising his maid. Everyone is shocked. The man, Enrique, states that if he handles it personally, there is no issue. He also adds that sending her away might mean losing the chance to ever see a bikini armor scenario again. Gradually, the mercenaries agree, concluding that the main point is not to underestimate the maid's loyalty. They acknowledge his judgment as impressive. Ultos is stunned as Enrique effortlessly silences everyone. Seeing this, he assumes that Enrique is the leader of the place. Enrique studies him closely and notes from his stance that he has not simply lost weight, but is in strong physical condition. His hands confirm daily sword training. He senses that Ultos is completely different from before. Enrique then requests a test match before training begins. Ultos agrees, and the match starts. Before it begins, Ultos picks up his sword, aware that even a wooden blade can cause serious injury and even break bones if mishandled. Still, he assumes Enrique would not seriously fight a 10-year-old child. When his rank is mentioned, it is revealed that Enrique has been stripped of his guild rank and is currently unranked. Ultos is shocked and tries to understand the reason, forming a negative impression of him. He recalls being told that the mercenary group was once highly skilled and powerful, but most of the strong adventurers have since left. The reason given is the decline of the family's reputation. Due to the heir's strange behavior and the influence of Scumultos, the group has now been reduced mostly to F-rank adventurers and is seen as companions of a spoiled noble. Ultos realizes that Enrique's earlier attitude likely came from being an F-rank. He becomes certain of it and decides to measure his own ability against him. He steps forward and prepares for combat. Enrique also gets ready. Ultos calmly apologizes in advance, stating that if he cannot control himself, injuries may happen. The fight begins. Ultos swings his sword and attacks quickly. Enrique dodges the strike with ease. Watching this, Ultos realizes that it is a standard counter technique from last arc, something he already knew about, which is why he was able to read it. The others around them react in shock as they witness Ultos's movements. Enrique states that if body enhancement cannot be used, the match is a waste of time. Ultos quickly understands that without body enhancement, he cannot even handle an F-rank opponent. Still, he refuses to stop and prepares his next move. Enrique notices his determination and prepares to counter. Ultos activates his technique, mob-style body enhancement, and pushes forward, fully committed to the attack. Ultos steps forward to close the distance, but Enrique instantly counters with his sword, deflecting the attack and sending him back. Ultos barely keeps hold of his sword and quickly understands that closing the gap is the real key. With careful focus and precision, he tries again, rushing in for another strike. Enrique responds without hesitation, landing a heavy kick that sends him flying. The impact shocks everyone. Rayla rushes forward in panic. Ultos lands hard, realizing he was thrown nearly 8 meters. Confusion and pain overwhelm him as he cannot understand why a kick was used in a swordsmanship match. He feels stunned that someone would strike a 10-year-old so forcefully. He also realizes that without his mob-style defense technique reinforcing his clothes, his internal organs could have been severely damaged. Seeing him still move, Enrique approaches and apologizes, saying he got carried away because his movements were impressive. Ultos, still in pain, feels no satisfaction from being praised by an F-rank, and only a sense of humiliation from being counter-kicked. Rila steps in firmly, telling Enrique not to act arrogant just because he won. She insists that her master was nervous since it was his first match, and claims that if he were serious, he could defeat him with a single finger. Enrique ultimately admits that Ultos is truly strong. He then asks where he learned to move like that. A heavy silence falls as everyone waits for his response. Ultos realizes all eyes are on him. He considers firing back with a sharp, sarcastic remark at the F-rank adventurer, searching for the most cutting response. He briefly imagines insulting Enrique as a useless, bikini armor-loving spoiled brat who skipped training his whole life and still challenged an adventurer, followed by a mocking apology. He then considers unleashing another barrage of insults after losing the match. But he immediately dismisses both ideas, realizing they serve no purpose and go against his goal. He reminds himself that his aim is to remain a mob character, And in this moment, the correct response is to act like one. With a calm expression, he states that he is fine and thanks them for their concern. He admits he was confident, but real combat is far more difficult, and then firmly tells Enrique that one day he will definitely knock him out. Altos smiles and assures him that he will be happy if training continues in the future. With Ryla by his side, he leaves the place. After his departure, commotion spreads everywhere. Everyone is shocked by how much he has changed and grown more confident. They cannot believe he took Enrique's kick head-on and still stood without showing weakness. Most assume that Enrique must have been holding back. Even Enrique, though reluctant, begins to accept this idea. He wonders if anyone truly noticed the young master's movements. Meanwhile, the others keep talking about Ryla. Enrique's mind refuses to settle. He replays the fight and recalls Altos' explosive power. If the final strike had connected properly, it could have broken his ribs and possibly ended his adventurer career. He understands that his kick was purely reflex. He had no chance to hold back. With a slightly frustrated mood, he approaches his companion Jose and asks about his rank, questioning if a D rank could endure such a kick. Jose replies that a clean hit would leave him bedridden for 3 weeks. Enrique becomes more confused. He cannot understand how an ordinary person could endure that attack and stand normally. Jose further explains that no normal person can withstand his kick. He is a former S-rank adventurer, and even A-rank fighters would struggle against it. Hearing this, Enrique realizes that Altos took the kick head-on, stood up calmly, and showed no visible pain. He concludes that Altos must have used body reinforcement, yet there was no sign of magical leakage. This deepens his confusion. He reflects further and notices that his movements were not amateurish. They carried the weight of solid basic training. His attention then shifts to Ryla. Of all things, her presence feels the most unusual. The maid in bikini armor seems out of place, but he senses that is not the real issue. What stands out most is her strong determination. He recalls hearing that Altos had been abandoned by everyone in the mansion, but the situation does not fit that story. As he connects all the details, a clear conclusion forms in his mind. Altos' image as a lazy, spoiled brat is only a disguise. His obesity, refusal to study, chasing the maid, and even the forced ahli behavior were all acts to mislead everyone. He becomes convinced that Altos is hiding something and preparing for something serious while keeping his disguise intact. After reaching this conclusion, Enrique warns Jose that something has already begun. He believes Altos has likely realized something important and taken steps to prepare for it. His behavior as a spoiled brat was part of a plan to deceive everyone. The start of serious training signals that the true beginning has arrived. Enrique finds the situation intriguing while Jose remains uninterested. The scene shifts to the mansion. Altos lies in bed, still in pain. Ryla carefully changes his compress and reassures him that she will take good care of him. She even sits close while tending to him. Seeing this, Altos becomes visibly shocked. The situation feels overwhelming, as if he has entered an 18-plus game world. His discomfort grows. Ryla gently tells him that he has not relied on her lately, but she will always be there to comfort him whenever needed. Altos sincerely thanks her for her loyalty and asks her to leave for now. Ryla happily agrees and leaves, telling him to call her anytime. After she leaves, he exhales in relief, realizing how close he came to another bad ending. One wrong move could have repeated a Scumless-like mistake. He begins to seriously reflect on Ryla, realizing her constant care has increased her loyalty more than expected. A troubling thought crosses his mind that her influence may have played a role in Scumless' arrogance in the original story. He accepts this as possible and realizes he must be especially cautious around her. A wave of pain hits him again, and he curses Enrique. Thinking about him, he concludes that Enrique is a failed F-rank adventurer with a complete loser-like presence. He remembers that he never saw him in the game, confirming he is just a mob character. Still, he admits that he was able to keep up with him to some extent, and is currently only slightly below F-rank level. After some time, Altos gradually recovers. His wounds begin to heal and his condition improves. He realizes that it is time to begin proper training. Ryla arrives and informs him that his magic instructor has come. She helps him get dressed. While preparing, Altos sees Carla-sensei and freezes in shock, unable to process her presence at first. He quickly steadies himself and recalls that Carla-sensei, also known as Carla Orlando, is one of the heroines of last arc, an 18-plus game. Her striking beauty and presence had attracted many players, and he himself had relied on her more than most characters after Iris. In the game, she is a magic caster who has refined her arcane power to an extreme level, becoming overwhelmingly strong. In the late game, she permanently joins the protagonist party as a key member. A troubling thought forms in his mind. The official story never mentioned meeting her at this stage. Encountering a main character from last arc this early feels completely out of place. He realizes he has been reincarnated as a low-tier character and is trying to survive as a background mob. The main story of last arc begins in 4.5 years. If he remains a trash villain until then, a tragic end is unavoidable. To avoid that fate, he must stay hidden and live as a mob character before the story begins. That is his only plan. So far he has stopped acting like a scumbag, and the servants' opinion of him has improved. He has even started sword training to secure his survival. Yet, at this exact moment, he ends up meeting a main character. He suspects something like storyline force may be at work. Still, he firmly decides to avoid any involvement with Carla. She is the one who secretly stripped him of his noble rank and sent him to prison, all to protect the protagonist Sieg. He tries to speak with her. At first, she does not recognize him. After he introduces himself, she notices how thin he has become, and is slightly surprised. To him, she feels completely real as she stands before him. Looking at her closely, he feels that seeing her in reality is entirely different. It feels almost inappropriate, even like a crime. Carla notices his gaze and remarks that even after losing weight, he is still the same mischievous and perverted boy. He becomes embarrassed, while Rayla quickly steps in to defend him. Carla senses that her words are not entirely sincere, and that her true thoughts differ. She makes it clear that people's opinions of him are not good. Amid this, he is unsettled by her calm, smug expression. He still cannot understand why she treats him differently from the protagonist. Then Carla tells him that it is okay to rely on others sometimes, as he pushes himself too hard. Her words deeply affect him, and he becomes emotional, feeling as if his former self inside the protagonist once belonged to him. Carla then states that she has come to deliver the results of his magic aptitude test and requests a private conversation. He agrees, and Rayla leads them to a private room. He understands that magic aptitude is a personal matter, and clearing the room is standard procedure. He already knows the results from the game. As they walk, Carla suddenly trips and falls to the ground. Oltos is left stunned, unable to understand how she simply fell without any reason. Rayla checks on her with concern, but Carla calmly stands up and asks what happened. Rayla reminds her that she had just tripped and fallen, yet Carla shows no awareness of it at all. Seeing this, Oltos becomes certain that this is exactly what defines Carla. She is a highly capable, calm, and beautiful woman who is also slightly clumsy. She acts as if nothing happened, carrying an innocent and carefree attitude, which he finds both impressive and extremely cute. Rayla is shocked by Carla's response and guides her again as they move forward. While talking, they arrive at the secret room. Rayla then leaves them alone. Before presenting the appraisal results, Carla clearly states that she is quitting as his tutor. She explains that she has taught many noble children, but has never encountered a student as uncultured as him, and she cannot understand how it came to this point. Hearing this, he feels a strange relief, as if he has narrowly escaped. Carla notices his calm smile and becomes surprised. He explains that her beauty distracted him, preventing him from focusing on her words. However, she firmly states that during lessons he constantly stared at her body with unsettling eyes and maintained a creepy smile. She also reminds him that he once asked her to teach him magic for spying on girls bathing, as well as magic to make women's clothes transparent. With this, he accepts the reality that he truly was Scumless, beyond redemption. She then announces that her resignation is immediate. He calmly accepts it, acknowledging that nothing can be done. She proceeds to the appraisal results, explaining that it took time due to an unknown outcome. She reveals that his magical attribute is a rare type of spiritual magic. He recognizes this instantly from the game, showing no reaction. Carla asks for his response, noting the effort it took to determine it. She explains that spatial magic is a legendary form of power, recorded in old legends and associated with the final boss, as well as those who oppose it. He already understands its extreme strength and difficulty. She informs him that he has been granted a legendary magic reserved for chosen individuals and expects to feel some satisfaction. He feels no happiness, as the idea of being chosen directly opposes his goal of remaining a background character. He also recalls how Scumless misused spatial magic for inappropriate acts, which led to widespread hatred and a rapid fall into disgrace. For players it was amusing, but for Scumless it was not. He wishes instead for normal magic. He understands that despite its rarity, spatial magic was used in the worst possible way. He considers that becoming invisible himself would be more practical than exposing others. He quietly states that he would rather disappear. Carla is taken aback and asks what he means. She senses a deeper meaning behind his words and begins to consider that he may have been aware of his dangerous potential all along. She concludes that such overwhelming power could harm others, and that he may have intentionally acted as a foolish, corrupt noble to keep people away. As she reflects further, everything begins to make sense to her. She recalls her own past as a gifted but lonely child. She decides that he may be hiding emotional pain and gently tells him not to worry, assuring him that she will not abandon him. Introducing herself properly, Carla tells him that she is publicly known as a calm and brilliant genius. The top mages of the royal capital's Mage Guild and Magic Academy hold her in the highest regard. Some even consider her the greatest spellcaster of the current era. She admits that she never liked interacting with other people. In fact, she hated it. Since childhood, she had always been treated as a genius and never truly formed meaningful connections. Because of that, she spent most of her life alone. Over time, she became so accustomed to loneliness that relationships began to feel like a burden. Then, to his surprise, she pulls him into a tight embrace and tells him that she cannot help herself because she is just like him. She cannot leave him to suffer through loneliness on his own. With his face buried against her chest, an inappropriate thought briefly crosses his mind, but he quickly pushes it aside. What confuses him most is how the situation ended up like this. Carla continues holding him while quietly mumbling to herself. Her embrace is firm, and despite everything, it feels strangely comforting. He remembers clearing her route in last arc nearly 10 times. 9 of those endings were pure romance routes. He cannot even count how many times she helped him throughout the game. What he remembers clearly is her kind and supportive nature. Seeing her in real life fills him with genuine happiness. Then reality hits him. This is not the real problem. His goal has always been to use his knowledge of the original game to live as an unremarkable background character. Getting involved with one of the heroines is the exact opposite of that goal. The bigger issue is that all of this is happening 4.5 years before the original story even begins. At this point, most of his game knowledge is practically useless. He has no idea how he is supposed to handle this situation. A moment later, Carla informs him that there will be no lesson today because she has other plans. She tells him that she will begin teaching him magic starting tomorrow and warns him that she intends to be strict. To him, she looks unbelievably beautiful. She tells him that he no longer needs to act like a perverted brat around her. After saying this, she leaves. Not long afterward, Ryla arrives. Seeing his flushed face, she becomes concerned and asks about his condition. He reassures her that he is simply tired from being nervous. She accepts his explanation, and he once again realizes how sharp her instincts are. For now, he decides to observe Carla carefully and avoid making any rash decisions. He still lacks important information. One mistake could trigger a death flag. He also remembers that in the original game, Carla worked behind the scenes to strip Scumless of his title and send him to prison. The thought alone makes him uneasy, and he becomes determined to avoid that fate. Later that afternoon, he heads to the mercenary training grounds to practice swordsmanship. During training, he accidentally hits himself with his sword. Seeing this, Enrique jokes that if he keeps doing that, he will end up bald. He then kindly teaches him the proper stance so he can stop hitting himself. As they continue practicing, Enrique casually mentions that he heard Carla is his magic tutor. Altos is caught off guard. Enrique explains that everyone already knows. Carla is famous, and people everywhere have been talking about her. Hearing that, Altos finally realizes how well known she really is. Enrique keeps praising her. What surprises Altos most is how casually Enrique mentions her incredible strength, as if it were just an afterthought. He knows the truth. Carla is the #1 mage in the royal capital. Countless noble families dream of having her as their children's tutor. As expected, the Randall ducal family possesses enough influence to invite someone of her caliber. Then Enrique brings up a rumor. According to what he heard, Altos once threw a tantrum and refused to learn magic unless his tutor was beautiful and had a large chest. Hearing this, Altos realizes that this is exactly the kind of story people would expect from Scumless. Enrique confidently claims that he understands his true objective and assures him that he can ask for help anytime. The statement leaves Altos completely confused. Once again, he concludes that F-rank adventurers are impossible to understand. After that, he decides to focus on improving himself. Every morning, he studies magic under Carla. Every afternoon, he trains in swordsmanship and combat techniques with Enrique. Despite being only F-rank, Enrique still has a surprising amount of knowledge to offer. Determined not to waste a single moment, he continuously maintains body enhancement to strengthen both his body and magical power. Before he realizes it, 6 months pass. One day, Ryla rushes in with important news. A letter has arrived from the Lord. The letter states that he will return home in 1 year. Hearing this, he becomes nervous. When he first reincarnated into this world, both of his parents were already away. After thinking about it, he remembers that they had become occupied dealing with the increasing number of monsters appearing throughout their territory. Ryla then explains another detail. The family is supposed to meet in a nearby town. That town is Lyon. The moment he hears the name, his body freezes. The time has finally come. Trying to confirm his fears, he asks about the area around Lyon while desperately hoping it refers to some other place. Her response destroys that hope. It is exactly the lion he knows. The starting town. Every last arc player knows that name. A terrible incident takes place there. According to the timeline, that event occurs 3 years before the beginning of the main story, which means it will happen in 1 year. He remembers all too well what happened in the original game. That incident was the event that accelerated his descent into depravity. A chill runs down his spine. He cannot go to Lyon. No matter what happens, he has to find a way to avoid it. Rayla senses that he is not in good condition and asks about him. His face looks pale, but he forces himself to act normal. He says he is fine, yet inside he feels completely unsettled. He understands that the starting town Lyon is like a tutorial stage before the main story. It feels different from normal tutorials. He knows last arc is an Oblige, so even the tutorial follows that tone. A grand party is held to welcome the Duke and Duchess. Behind it, a hidden and suspicious gathering takes place. He knows that Scumless became the center of that secret event and was caught in a mastermind's trap. He ended up involved in disgraceful actions. He confirms that the rumors were true. He had seen it himself. There is no doubt that Scumless was a corrupt and vile noble boy. That truth spread beyond the Randall household and reached society. After that, the main heroine began to hate him as if he were something filthy. That fixed his role as a mid-boss villain. He understands that this is the first half of the Lyon storyline. The second half is a combat training phase unrelated to him. He thinks avoiding the secret party would be enough. He even considers avoiding Lyon completely. But then he realizes this world is not normal. A world inside an Oblige may not follow normal logic. He feels as if an unseen force might be guiding events toward the story. He decides that normal logic cannot be trusted. He needs information first. The scene shifts to the mercenary training grounds. Enrique is absent. His companion says Enrique went to town for fun last night and has not returned. He was supposed to spar today. Altos thanks him and prepares. The sparring partner asks about his usual training. He replies that he starts with basic training, then a 5-point match. Altos finishes basic training quickly. The match begins. The opponent is shocked by his speed and asks about it. He realizes his movements are extremely fast. From the second round, he fights more carefully and observes closely. This leads to his loss. Still, the opponent notices the early speed does not repeat. In the end, he admits defeat and accepts his strength without excuses. Altos finds it strange. He realizes Jose is much weaker than Enrique. He even thinks he may be below F rank. He is relieved that he trained without relying on mob-style body enhancement. He sees Jose as a decent person and a good mediator type. He asks for advice on how to act in dangerous situations. Jose answers clearly that the only correct option is to run. Survival comes first for any adventurer. Death ends everything. Altos takes this advice seriously. He respects it because it comes from someone who faces danger regularly. After returning home, he reports everything to Carla. He also asks her in a serious tone what should be done in dangerous situations. She assures him that she will help and tells him to consult her anytime. Her words comfort him. At the same time, he becomes cautious. Carla is extremely powerful. She is considered one of the strongest members of the main party. He remembers that the developers also treat her as overpowered. He also recalls that she is often weakened by strange conditions when she joins the main story. He understands his goal is still to remain a background character. Getting close to such a powerful figure creates risk he cannot control. He thanks Carla sincerely for her support. He says that if he ever ends up in real danger, he will seek her help. Later, he speaks with the headmaid. She reacts with surprise and frustration when he repeats the same question about what to do in a dangerous situation. He explains it again calmly. The headmaid is shocked. She tells him that if he is already thinking at that level, it means failure has already begun. She explains that nobles prevent such situations before they happen. That is how aristocratic life works. She asks him directly what he would do in danger. He answers clearly that he would abandon everything and escape because death means losing everything. The headmaid is stunned. She reacts strongly and reminds him that he once spoke about noble obligation. She questions his change in attitude. He remembers that he had used that phrase before only to hide his transformation. He immediately apologizes. The headmaid also realizes she may have spoken more harshly than intended. Still, Altos comes to understand that the path he is trying to follow is in fact a noble obligation. With that realization, he leaves. Alone in his room, he reflects deeply. He realizes he was trying to avoid his doomed role. In doing so, he almost drifted back toward becoming a corrupt noble. He understands that becoming like Scumless is exactly what he must avoid. He decides that avoiding dangerous situations completely is the only path left for survival. With that, a year passes and they set out for Lyon. On the way, Altos asks Rayla once again to confirm if everything is truly fine. Rayla is startled and asks what he means. She wonders if he intends to lift the ban on Anhan. He suddenly remembers that such a rumor exists. He calmly explains that he has already said this many times. His intentions are not improper or selfish, but simply a means to achieve a larger goal. Hearing this, Ryla nods and says she has no objection to doing An. The response instantly alarms him. If she can do it whenever he wants, he risks becoming the scumbag villain he is trying to avoid. He reminds himself that he must stay away from any path leading to a bad ending. He firmly states that An will only be used for this occasion. Enrique, sitting nearby, listens in complete confusion. He cannot tell what part of the conversation is serious or normal. Nothing about it makes sense to him. The situation reminds him of the bikini armor incident. He becomes convinced that An is some kind of trick or hidden scheme. Seeing his expression, Oltos grows uneasy. His attention then shifts to Lyon. Lyon is the largest city in Randall territory and one of the greatest cities in the kingdom. In the game, this is where Scumultos' downfall begins, triggered by the secret party. The place is dangerous. His plan to avoid becoming a villain is to include Ryla among the older sisters prepared by the mastermind and somehow manage the situation. However, he cannot explain it without mentioning the game, so he feels he has not expressed himself properly. Ryla then admits quietly that she has never held a job for long. Things usually start well but end in dismissal. Her sadness surprises them. Enrique immediately disagrees, saying anyone who fired her clearly lacks judgment. In his eyes, she is kind, beautiful, and hardworking. He then asks Oltos for his opinion. Oltos remembers that Scumultos himself fired her in the original story. Ryla thanks them and admits she is clumsier than most people. She has broken heirlooms, plates, and other valuables, leaving both of them shocked. She then reveals that when she was about to be fired, Oltos stepped in and declared he would never forgive anyone who dismissed her. Oltos is caught off guard. Ryla smiles and says that from that moment, she decided to become the best maid she could for him. That is why she is willing to do even things like An whenever he requests it. Listening to her, he realizes her role is far more important than he thought. Enrique then asks what she does besides An. She explains that she handles his daily needs and ensures he is never alone. To Enrique, it sounds like a child clinging to his mother. Ryla adds that she has not needed to do that recently. Enrique jokes that even child prodigies still miss their mothers at that age. The comment irritates Oltos. Finally, they arrived in Lyon. Oltos instructs them to follow the plan. Enrique confirms he will act as his bodyguard. They reach the Randall ducal house, Lyon Villa. The staff welcomes them warmly. Oltos is surprised to see the headmaid, who explains she is supervising preparations for the Duke and Duchess's arrival. She also reminds him that she already informed him. She tells him he is free until evening. He decides to explore the city. Walking through Lyon feels surreal. Everything matches Last Arcanum exactly, filling him with emotion. As they tour the city, he recognizes many places from the game. The citizens praise Mayor Gregorio for the city's development. They describe him as humble, capable, and deeply loved. The praise feels identical to the game, yet he knows the truth. Gregorio is not a hero, but a dangerous hidden villain. Every player knows this. In the story, Gregorio appears after Scumultos and becomes a far greater threat, serving as a mid-boss in the Academy arc. He understands that exposing Gregorio now would only make him seem insane. Lyon is his first major challenge. To survive, he must outsmart Gregorio or face a bad ending and death. The odds are not in his favor. He briefly considers escaping but rejects the idea. His only advantage is his game knowledge, and losing that would weaken him. This frustrates him, as he once believed this knowledge would make him unbeatable. Rayla notices his troubled expression and asks if he is all right. Oltos decides to return to the villa. Enrique goes to investigate on his own, and they head back. Later that evening, his parents arrived. For the first time, he meets them as their son. His father is surprised and struggles to recognize him. Then Oltos looks at his mother, whose beauty leaves him speechless. She also looks at him in complete surprise, unable to recognize her own son.
Here I am, know it's been a while. I was in denial about my love. Here I stand,